What's going on YouTube, and welcome to episode 4 of the U.S.S. Cerritos tutorial. I'm Zero Elite and I just want to thank you very much for tuning into today's episode, and if you haven't, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button in helping me and supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. And today we have about a 35-minute video. We're going to be picking up where we left off on our saucer, and we're going to be working on a couple of things. We've got about a 35-minute video today. We're going to be removing some extra hull lines from the middle here. You can see some of them right here. We're going to be getting rid of the middle access, and then we're going to be adding a couple more hull strut lines, and then we'll be working on the actual ship pylons, which is going to be pretty cool. And then we'll do the cuts in the pylons to wrap up the episode. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. I'm going to start with the front and middle, and want to make sure that we're not deleting any of our actual hull lines, just the middle stuff, because remember, anything in between here is where the actual hull is going to go. Don't worry about the thickness up in front here. We'll figure that out when we get there, but we're looking pretty good so far. These other ones I have not done. I've only actually done the front, so we want to make sure that we do the left and right, adding an extra layer, and then deleting the middle. We're only going up to the circle and we're adding that extra layer. All this extra stuff here, we're going to delete all this, going all the way back to our first inner ring, or the second inner ring, excuse me, right after the yellow line. Let's get rid of that. Perfect. We're going to do the same thing for the front now, and then the left side. A lot of this, you're not going to see me skipping over anything. Most of the stuff in this episode, you're going to see me doing in real time. Like I was talking about in some of the other episodes, where I can, where there's stuff that's just super repetitive, you will see me skip through it a little bit. Now, when we get down to the pylons, some of that's going to be repetitive, but the reason why I'm not skipping through it is because I make subtle changes here and there to get the length right on it. So that was kind of why I didn't really want to skip over. I wanted to go over it with you, like the length and things like that. But we'll get there later on in this episode. Right now, we're just worried about adding the hull lines on the edges of our circle where it needs to be added, and then getting rid of the middle axis, because this was technically our original two lines that we started with, and then we thickened up our saucer here to make it more 3D and start to get a good idea of the actual size this thing's going to be. Make sure to do the same thing for the back. Now we're on the rear of the saucer. All right, now let's get rid of the access. Not deleting our hull line. Looking good. Want to make sure that you do not delete any of this ring right here that we have filled in. I deleted part of that hull line, but I'm going to go back and fix that. We're just going to get rid of the access underneath. I'm going to go ahead and fix that. All right, looking good. Quite a bit ahead of where we were during the Disco Enterprise, and we're about to shoot ahead even more because I definitely don't think that we were working on the pylons on episode 4. I think that was more like episode 20 or something like that before we got there. Granted, this ship has smaller parts on it, but and there's also a reason why I'm doing the pylons, because they actually, part of them stick out on top of the saucer. But we'll get in that in a few moments. I want to go in and we're going to delete the access in the inner ring. Make sure we're not deleting our hull lines. And also making sure I'm not deleting any of the actual ring itself. Also make sure we're not deleting any of the lower hull lines too. Just these middle two rows right here. And now when we get rid of this, it's really going to start to free up a lot of room on the ship. And as we go and we start to layer it in and actually close it in, the leftovers will go in and we'll get rid of that when we do the interior. But this was a bit of a puzzle getting this done right. Part of that had to do with I'd never done this type of ship before or this era. So I mean, part of this was a learning experience, but I think the order in which I did this wasn't too bad. I don't think anybody will have a problem copying it if they take the time to watch the video and do it in the same order. You should be fine. 'Cause really, I mean, it's a lot more work from the Constitution class saucer, but really just the same type of process, planning everything out ahead and looking at the saucer above to try to shape out the ship. And I'm just filling in this whole line on the back, or going towards the back. I want to make sure get rid of the access. So now all four sides match. I'll make sure don't delete that middle ring. I'm actually pretty excited. I just upgraded to a newer software. I was using an older OBS program. Now I'm using the newer one. So I don't want to say just yet, but there's some cool stuff I'm going to be doing to the um, videos when I'm streaming them, and I'm looking forward to that. And I've also got some new stuff coming on the YouTube channel. I've been talking about it a little bit, maybe venturing into doing type of podcasts and things like that, as well as what I'm currently doing. So I just want to stress all stuff that I have going on currently with the YouTube channel. That's going to continue. My Minecraft videos Tuesday through Friday, and then my Starship Evo builds on Monday. But there's other stuff, I think that I can do too, that could be pretty interesting. And once I get closer to launching that, I'm going to talk about it more. But there's a lot of cool stuff to come. So I want to pause this just for 2 seconds because I'm going into this quickly. But basically, what I did was just look at the height of the pylons and then these pieces right here, because these struts on top of the saucer are actually the top portion of the pylons. So I was looking at their spacing. So we're going to go back over to the top side of our saucer now and space them out. We're going to start off our middle line here. And we're going to go 3 out. And then on the fourth one, we're going to build our line. We're going to go all the way back until we are 3 blocks out from our yellow line. And I'm going to verify that. We'll go back after we finish this. And then in the front here, we're going to go up to the second cut. Not this first one, but we're going to go up to the second cut right here. I'm going to go back just a moment, add a couple more blocks. I'm using blue because I want this to stand out. Obviously, this won't stay with the ship. I'm just using this as a marker right now because I want this line to stick out. You can see I'm counting it. That's 3 blocks out. So on the fourth block is where we're putting that row. Then we're going to do the same thing on the right side of the ship. So on the fourth block, we're going to build out to the second cut going forward. And let's see, line that up. That's perfect. Now going back, we're going to go all the way back until we were 3 blocks out from the yellow line. I swear that looks like a peace symbol when you look at that from the air. But once we close it in, it won't. All right, see, perfect. On the left side, that's just where it needs to be, 3 blocks out. And then let's go over to the right side and just double check, because last thing you want is when stuff doesn't match up perfectly and you realize that's 1 or 2 off. And again, I'm just going by that rule. If I do one thing on one side, I'm doing it again on the other if it's the same thing. And now we're going to go down. We're going to build a pillar going down until we get to the same line of our lower hull. And we're going to go forward until we get to the front end of our blue line. And then we're going to build another pillar going upward. Basically what I'm doing here is that this blue box that I'm making is what we're going to be building the pylon off of. Because I'm thinking what I'm going to do when I do the interior is I'm still going to have the turbo lift facade in front of the pylons on the saucer so it looks as accurate as I can make it. But when I start building this out, you'll really be able to see what I mean, the angle that the pylons are shaped. It's just going to be physically impossible to build any type of turbo lift going from the saucer section down to the lower hull. That's gonna be the only disappointing thing with this build, and it was probably the only reason I was considering not doing it. But as I got through season one of Lower Decks, I actually enjoyed that show so much that um, they won me over. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do this ship. Because on top of that, um, I actually had a lot of people ask for this build too. So now we're going to go back. We're going to add our light gray concrete, a row going above, and then underneath, we're going to add a row of white concrete, which is technically going to be our first row. We're going to be doing this going down at an angle. First block will match up perfectly with the blue. We're actually going to be going 18 down. Then we're going to build down, cut out one, and then go back one, delete that block. So now it's going down and back at an angle. We're going to do the same thing for the back, but it's going to come back one extra. So now it's going to give the impression that it's slanting backwards, just like in the picture. And we're going to repeat this process 18 times. Eventually, we are going to extend that out to 23 total. We'll add an additional 5 to that. But I'll show you how I do that, because at first we're going to stop at 18 and then we're going to build the left side. But it's not really that big of a deal, just adding a couple more rows to it. And while this is going to get to our 18, I'm also counting the first row that we added right underneath the blue line. So that counts as the first row. But no, I'm actually definitely really excited for the next episode of Star Trek Discovery that's going to be coming up. Never thought I'd actually say that, but the last two episodes of that show really won me over, between the whole storyline of them finding Starfleet again, and then the ship getting the refit. And then, like, I'm not gonna lie, I was completely broadsided by the fact that they made a sequel to that Next Generation episode, Unification. And this is spoilers, so if you have not seen this, you're probably going to want to mute me for a few moments. So spoiler warning. But when Leonard Nimoy showed up as Spock, and they, played back a clip from Unification, I thought that was so cool. I mean, they did a really good job, and I was surprised when I looked online. There's a lot of people that were hating on it, and I really don't understand why, because it really seemed like the people that were hating on it were saying that there wasn't enough action, and this, that, whatever. I'm just like, yo, I'm like, you need to watch some old school Next Generation or TOS and Deep Space Nine and Voyager. It wasn't all about the action, And the story between Michael Burnham finding her mom and everything, like, that hit me in the heart. And like that whole scene where, like, the mom, like, how she, like, literally calls Burnham out, like, in front of the whole Navarre council, like, that was like, I just ate it up. Um, I want to get back into this a little bit, so you can see that right now I'm looking at the front angle of our pylons here, the angle that we're going at. And see, this is kind of what I'm meaning here, that we're not going to be able to build out a turbo lift, because really what we would need in order to do this is one of two things. And I really didn't want to do either one of them when I was considering this. And I actually did consider it, because at one point I was like, maybe I need to figure out a way to make the pylons work, um, going into, or not the pylons, turbo lift going into the lower hull. And I was like, well, there's one of two things I can do. I can either make the pylons straight, which I do not think would have matched the ship at all. I think it would have completely taken the look away. Or I could have added a neck on the ship. And I actually found a picture of the Cerritos. Again, this is another call out to Trek Yards. One of the guys that does the show, I guess he did a rendering where he added the neck in, where it looked very similar, like the Enterprise D, and it actually looked really good. But then it wasn't the Cerritos. So, like, that's just kind of the dilemma that I've had here. Like I said, I'm gonna do the lower hull interior, obviously, but there's still a couple of things I got to figure out with that. So anyway, we've got our angling lined up here and kind of our length. Like, these pylons are kind of long, but they're not super long. We're gonna add a couple more rows to this. You can all see how they have the cuts in the middle of them. Which I don't know. I'm not gonna lie. There were when I first saw this ship, I really wasn't crazy about it, but it's grown on me quite a bit. And I think especially after I've gone, through the course of watching the show and then through building it, it's just been really cool. So we're gonna continue on now until we get to row 18, when we're gonna stop, and then we're gonna do some um, ruler slash training wheel lines going across to make sure that both sides match up, and then we'll do the left side. But while we're continuing on this, anyway, I really enjoyed the whole storyline with Unification 3. I love that they showed the end game of Spock's legacy, and that it took. I thought it was crazy that it took 900 years for the Romulans and Vulcans to unify, but they did. And I was like so blown away by that. I was like, okay, I'm like that's kind of interesting. Vulcan's not even Vulcan anymore. Now it's Navarre, and like they're all one people. I thought that was cool. It's like in a sense, Spock completed what he sought out to do from the beginning, or not from the beginning anyway, but at least like one of his last things that he did before he went back in time to the Kelvin timeline. Um, and even that's kind of interesting too, because it all kind of ties in together, because even though like in the Kelvin timeline it was a little bit different, in that era, instead of the Romulans losing the planet, it's the Vulcans. So is the same thing going to happen there, because maybe Spock started the same transition, but on Vulcan? I don't know. I mean, that could be something that could be interesting to see them do. I mean, they probably won't double tap it again like that for the movies, but if they did ever decide to do that, I wouldn't be against it. I really wouldn't. Because I love when they tie in and go back into those past episodes. I think that was one of the reasons why I liked Lower Deck so much, because there were episodes and storylines that they picked up from TOS and Next Gen, and I thought that that's really clever writing. Um, and even doing that and how they did it in Unification, that's something they need to keep doing. I think if they do that, um, it's a way that not only can you get old school Trek fans like myself back into it, but maybe you can revisit old characters and stuff too and bring them into the show, kind of like what they did with Jerry Ryan on Picard. um, that's another show that was different, and I don't know how I felt about Picard, but that's maybe a conversation for another day. I want to get back in a little bit what we got going on here. Um, you see, we've built out to number 18, and now we're doing our divider lines on each corner of the last row. And I'm building it out to about the length I think it needs to be, but uh, don't worry about the total length of the blue. Just want to make sure it's about far out enough that um, when we get down there, building this out on the left side, that we won't have to build too much out to connect them. But we'll get down there in a few moments. Now we're going to bang out this left side. So far, we're looking pretty good. I've been having some additional comments on stuff that people would like to see me build. Um, I've had a lot of people asking me for the Enterprise E in the comment section, and I can tell you that that ship is definitely coming, because that's something that I've talked a lot about while I was doing the Disco era Enterprise. That I've spent so much time in this particular era, whether it's the Kelvin timeline or um, you know the disco timeline. I've done a lot of ships from that era, and I really would like to move into doing the next gen ships, and the Cerritos is really the beginning of it. After we do the Cerritos, I know that I'm doing the Enterprise D. I really want to fulfill that promise, and also because I put so much work into the Cerritos in preparation for doing the Enterprise D, and also the mock tutorial. I'm excited to see how that comes out, but um, Enterprise E is definitely going to be a ship that's coming. I don't know if it'll be after the Enterprise D, because I don't want to have like a huge parade of Enterprises back to back. Um, and I want to switch it up a little bit in between and do some other builds. But I want to see kind of where I'm at when I get towards Enterprise D, what I'm feeling at that time. This is the most ships at this point now that I've built in Minecraft since I've been playing this game, because typically after I do each ship build, I'm not gonna lie, before, like when I did my other enterprises before the discovery, I took a good chunk of time off of Minecraft, sometimes like up to a year or more, and like life just picked up, and you know had other things going on. But this was before I was doing the YouTube channel consistently too. um, but I've been trying to do it in a way that that I build up. enough recording material that I can keep the videos going long enough so I can take intermediate breaks in between. So far, that's actually been working pretty well. So that's why I keep saying that this is something that I'm just going to keep doing because I haven't gotten that feeling of getting burnt out or anything, um, which is really good. And I've actually been really enjoying this. But I'm not gonna lie, I've taken a short break from building on Minecraft since I built the outside of the Cerritos, and then I'm probably gonna hop back in either this weekend or next week, and then bang out the rest of the interior that I haven't done because I have started it on Thanksgiving, and then right before Thanksgiving, I was working on the interior. I was doing the corridors. The corridors and the ship are actually done. It's everything else I got to do now. But anyway, some of the other stuff I've had other people ask me for. Captain Riker's Titan. That's been a ship I've had a couple of people ask for. Not nearly as popular as Enterprise E though. Um, one other interesting build I've had some people ask me for is Deep Space Nine. Actually, I just had that the other day. Um, that could be something cool. I don't know if that's going to be done in Minecraft. I might end up doing that in Starship Evo only so that I can dock my ships up to it, and I think that would be really, really cool. But I might end up doing it in Minecraft. Again, I don't know. I want to see where I'm at when I get there around to doing that ship. But anyway, you can see now that we've got our left and right side done. Now we're going to add 5 more rows to each side. And that will bring us to a total of 23 rows. And I think at that point we'll have a nice length going here where if we add anything more than that, we will be approaching the point of making the pylons too long. Because we want them to be long, but we don't want them to be too long because then that can throw off the whole look of the ship. All right. So far looking pretty good. Still have a little bit left to do in this episode. We were rocking and rolling though. We were already 20 minutes in. We've got about 14 minutes left. Another thing that I've been toying with because my girlfriend, she's actually been suggesting that I do it, but I really haven't had that many people ask me about this. But doing live streams while I'm building, if that's something that you want to see me do, let me know in the comment section, and keep bugging me about it until I decide to do it. Because the more people I have that get into that, I can tell you that I will start doing live streams um, while I'm doing these builds, so maybe you can ask me questions. I've got a lot of cool things that I'm going to do to also try to bring the building community together. I'm not ready to talk about all of that just yet, but there's a lot of things that I'm really trying to get together for this channel to try to showcase some of the stuff that I do, but also to be able to reach more people, talk about Star Trek, talk about ship builds, and maybe be in a position where I can see other people's ship builds too. Because at heart, I love building ships on Minecraft and in general. I mean, even building models. And if I can meet people in the community that are like-minded, that enjoy doing the same thing, and I think that's a win-win. So that's one thing I've wanted to do because it sucks on Xbox. You can't share your builds. I don't know why Mojang doesn't or Microsoft, they don't make the option where you can just upload your build so people can see it, or upload your save file. Should totally do it. Um, but I've had people ask me, if I could take a look at their build or give them pointers, but there's never a way to do that. So I've got something that I'm working on to try to maybe get some people in together on that. But I'll have more information probably as we get closer to the end of December. I'm really going to be working on that and a few other things to add on to the channel between now and the month of December, and adding in switching over to the new soft OBS software that I'm using now, the streaming one. It's really going to allow me to do so much more that I was not able to do before, and really step up the production quality in my videos and make them look way more professional as well. Because that's something I definitely want to do too, and If there's things that you see me doing during my YouTube videos that you think maybe I can improve on, whether it's talking points, things maybe I'm not calling out enough, maybe I'm being too specific, let me know in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you. Um, I don't mind constructive criticism, even if that's about my builds. If there's stuff that you don't like, let me know in the comments section, because I'll be the first one to admit that there's 1,001 ways to build these ships, and I'm not saying that my way is better than anyone else. I just know that at least what I'm doing, it works, and I've had other people so far that have had pretty good success with picking up the steps that I've given them. So I'm hoping that you can pick up some of this as you're doing this tutorial with me, and learn to do a little bit more building on your own without even needing my tutorial. But still, I hope that you decide at that point, once you don't need me anymore, you stick with me and keep watching. I definitely appreciate it, because I got a lot of cool stuff that I'm going to be doing. But that also brings me to the point that what other builds you want to see me do? I've talked about a couple of them, but what do you want to see me work on? Let me know in the comments section. And that does not have to be just Star Trek related. It can be anything nerd related in general. If I get enough people asking me for it, and think that there's a demand for it where I can get some views out of it, I will definitely add it to my list of ships I'm going to do. But if I don't do it right away, don't get discouraged by it, because if I don't answer your comment, more than likely, like about that build, it's because I want it to show up in my comment section in my analytic or in my settings on YouTube, so I can actually see that comment and it doesn't go anywhere. Because what I like to do in between builds, like when I did the Kelvin, for example, that was a top request. So I didn't do a tutorial for it, but I was like, this is a top request. This is going to be something that I'm going to do. I've had so many people ask for it. And the same thing with the Cerritos. The Cerritos was the number one request that I had. And so don't let it discourage you if it's not coming up. If you want to get more people into it, tell your buddies about the YouTube channel. Tell them to subscribe, and they can bother me about it too until I build it. And once we do it, it should be pretty good. I think I'm pretty confident in the building on here. I was shocked with how well the Cerritos came out. It had its problems, but I really do. I'm excited to get to the Enterprise D. Put it that way. Like, as good as the Cerritos came out, I'm really looking forward to doing that ship. Um, between the tutorial that I did for the mock Enterprise D and the Cerritos, I don't think I'm going to have too much of a problem with it. I might, in one or two spots, have some issues, because again, every ship has its own challenges, but I'm not too worried about it. You can see that I'm working on the spacing here on the front and back. I've added blocks going up at an angle spaced out, 4 in front, I believe, and then 2 in the back. We're going to be slightly adjusting that as we go a little bit. I'm just going my cuts up at an angle here. Doing this from the inside now instead of the outside, I can't see my gray outline, but I started so low down that I could see the cut that it's going at. So if you want to just make sure you don't make any mistakes, stay on the outside so you can see that gray line. But um, I wasn't too concerned with making that mistake. Should be good. So now everything in between, we're going to get rid of that, because now it's going to be the cut. Now when we zoom out, the cut's actually going to be a little bit too thin, or at least on the edges. We're going to have to thicken it up a little bit. And this is, again, one of the reasons why I decided not to skip over certain parts of this at all, because this is really, it's a key point in this part of the build. And even once we get through this episode, we're not done with the pylons yet. We've got a little bit more work to do to them. We've got to shape them a little bit more, add another layer to them, and then get down into the actual engines. And I'm doing all this now instead of finishing the hull, because I really want to proportion out the whole ship. And I wanted to showcase a little bit more wireframing and how to do it. And it's just, in order of breaking these shapes down piece by piece and doing it in a order that makes sense. Like the pylons, for example, we built the general shape of them, and now we're making the cut. Yeah, see that back cut, that line there is just way too thin. We got to bring that up a little bit, but we'll get there. Now I'm going to do space lines again on each corner because I want these lines to match up on the left side so we can make sure that our cuts are exactly the same. Or excuse me, I'm not doing it on the gray line. I'm doing it on the white block over on the right one and then on the left one. So literally the first white block is what we're building that on. All right, we got our bottom row. Now we're gonna do the top row too, because you want to make sure that it stops in the same row. You could count it out, but I always like to do this. Usually the main point where I do this is for the engines, but I've never built a ship that has this big of a cut in the pylon itself, so I just decided, to play it safe, let's just do the training line just to make sure that our cuts are matching up. Certainly now everything within this row between the blue, we're going to delete that, and that's our first cut. And now we can go down at an angle on both front and back. And that is a super easy way to determine where your cut needs to go. This is something that you don't even necessarily just have to apply to this Cerritos. You can use this technique in pretty much all of your builds if you're doing something that is, again, a duplicate. Because if you think about it, you're technically only building half of the Cerritos, and then you're repeating that same process again on the other side. So technically it's a duplicated side, just in reverse. But it definitely took a long time to get to this point. A lot of trial and error, I'll say that much. I did not used to always build my ships in this order like this. It took a couple of years and a couple of attempts to get to a point where I felt even comfortable enough to do a tutorial. Because even when I got my original 2009 Enterprise done, the first one that I uploaded on YouTube, I had people asking me to do a tutorial then, and even at that point, I wasn't ready to do it because I was still too new into Minecraft. Well, at least in the building blocks on Minecraft. But I think I've made a pretty good progression to a point where, again, I think that anybody that comes across this tutorial shouldn't have a problem building this out. And I say we because we're building this together. Because while I'm doing this, I get suggestions from people also in the comment section. And I do read all the comments that I get from everybody, and I thank everybody for the time that they take to make those comments on my channel. Um, I read everything good and bad, and I always take everything into consideration and take it to heart. I may not always make your change, but I usually always try to comment back and talk to everybody. So again, if there's anything that you're seeing on here you don't like, or if you do like it, hey, let me know what part that I worked on today that you enjoyed. Um, Now you can see I'm just repeating the same process again that we did on the right side pylon, but now we're doing it on the left. We're getting our gray line that we had. And the reason I'm doing this is because this line is more than likely going to stay here. I'm going to have to hop over to the right side and see where that cuts off at. It actually goes forward by 1. So now we need to do that also on this side. That's one of the reasons I like to, when I'm doing stuff, if I'm not sure, I will go back and check. And that's really the best thing to do. Save yourself the time of making a mistake and just go back and double check, because otherwise you're going to be in a situation where you made a boo-boo and then you got to fix it. Just like I did right here. I made a mistake. I should have built these gray blocks down by 1, and I built them up by 1. So I'm going to go over to this right side pylon. I'm going to check, realize I just done messed up, and we're going to go back over and we're going to delete the ones that we messed up on. We're going to redo it. Shift that over. There we go. Building it off the corner. We're going to go all the way up to the top cut. All right. We're looking good. We're getting down to the last 2 minutes. I think we're about done for today's episode. Only got 1 or 2 things left to do. But she's looking really good. She is starting to come together. And we're really rocking and rolling with the progress of this build. We're going to have a good portion of this ship built out in not too long. Now, what we're going to do on the back end of the pylons, we're going to add one block or one block of thickness, just literally an extra row on each level, going all the way up. We do the same thing on both the left side and the right side, only on the back side. You want to make sure you do that for every single row, including the gray block that's connected to the blue row. And if this isn't enough, it's not a big deal. We can always add another layer to it. But I like to do this conservatively because I gotta go down to and fix that. But I like to add in the layering conservatively and then zoom out and take a look at it because I mean, you can definitely make a lot of mistakes by making it too thick or too long. So I feel like in a situation like this, less is more, and just do it conservatively. Layer by layer, zoom out, take a look at it, see how it looks, because we can't get exact measurements of the Cerritos, so we really have to do this by looking at it. I already know, like, we're looking good, the shape's right, but there's too much of a hole here. We're gonna have to close in this cut just by a little bit, not so much in the front, but in the back still. It's just too much space in between. But I really like the profile of it. I think it looks fantastic. It looks just like the show. And when we start getting the hull lines put in and everything and closing it up, we really start to be able to see the shape of the saucer a little bit more. It's kind of hard to see with this extra row in here, but when we have the hull in, it'll start to come together. But I do think that's going to wrap this one up today. I just want to thank everybody for tuning into today's episode. And if you did enjoy this content today, if you can help me out and hit that like and subscribe button, I would greatly appreciate it. And if you can share this clip with your friends, people enjoy building, that would be pretty cool as well. And also, if you did enjoy today's episode, you can always catch new Minecraft episodes Tuesdays through Fridays. You can also catch my new Starship Evo builds on Mondays. Also, if you had any questions regarding this build, maybe I wasn't specific enough in a certain section, maybe you need a little bit of help, be sure to drop a comment below. I'll try to help you out in the comment section. If there's any ship builds you want to see me do, be sure to drop a comment below as well. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for me. I hope everybody has a happy and safe week, and I'll catch you in the next episode.